tell you what, let's dive straight in. What's your first tip you've got for us today?
So, my first tip is to make sure that you use post-it notes to find out what they don't understand. Now, this is specifically a particular time in your curriculum sequence, and I use these post-it notes in the lead-up to assessments. And the reason I do this, I'll explain first of all what I used to do, and then why I do what I do, and how it works in practice. But what I used to do is say to students, does anybody have any questions about this assessment that we've got coming up? And sure enough, one or two students would put their hands up, because I've since realised that asking students any questions is just about the most pointless question that you can ask. And there's actually research that's been done into students, their response when you ask them any questions, and they don't answer because they're worried that if they put their hand up and say, I don't understand this, that they're going to look stupid in front of their peers. So I wanted to get around this, and it took me a little bit of time to cotton on to the fact that they did have questions, they just weren't going to publicly admit them. And I tried different things where I'd go round and ask each table, can anybody tell me one thing they're worried about? And that wasn't working either. So one day I just said, okay, I've had enough of this. Gave them all a post-it note, anonymously. I want you to write down, every single person has to write down one thing about the upcoming assessment that they're worried about, that they don't understand, that they'd like me to come over, go over again. It can be anything at all. There's no stupid questions. Everybody's got to do one. And then what they do, they come and stick them on the board whenever they're done. And what I do in the lesson, if I can cover them, or if not in the next one or two lessons, I go through these post-it notes and I answer them one by one. But I say one by one, actually, what you find is that tends to be patterns where students usually have the same kind of worries, the same kind of misconceptions, the same kind of things that I've not taught effectively or not explained carefully. And I start to group them together and we'll start to answer them within topics. And one thing that's particularly helpful, it gives me immediate feedback in terms of areas that I need to cover rather than just asking them generally what they think. And secondly, I think it's really reassuring for students to know that actually they're usually worried about the same kind of things and that they're not this anomaly where they're stupid and they've struggled with something. And that is something that has brought about from students saying, no, nothing that I want to ask, to having something from every single person in the class.
Whoa, I love this. I absolutely love this. Right, so one kind of observation and one question for you here, Mark.
Yeah.
So the observation is, I completely agree with you with this. Anybody got any questions? I used to ask that for years and years and years. And I'll tell you the mistake I made. I assumed that silence was a signal of understanding. So if nobody said anything, I just assume everyone must get it. But of course, if anything, it's the complete opposite. If people aren't saying anything, it's either that they're, as you say, too scared, they don't want to be embarrassed in front of their peers, or sometimes they've such a lack of understanding that they can't even formulate exactly what it is they want to ask the question about. So yeah, getting rid of has anybody got any questions, that's been a big improvement in my teaching, so I love that. But here's my question for you. Whenever I use diagnostic questions and I say to students, okay, 3, 2, 1, show me your answers, and they vote A, B, C, D. What you often get is like a tactical delay where you'll get some kids who just wait that extra second just to check what their mates have done, and then they'll either swap their answer to match that, or they'll stick with their answer if a lot of other people have gone for it. I'm just wondering, even though you anonymise the post-it notes, do you get that some kids just want to wait a little bit until a few post-it notes are on the board? Is there a way that you just ensure that even with this strategy you've got, that students are still kind of open and willing to share their questions, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think that the beauty of sticking them on the board, even students who sat really nearby can't actually read what are on the other students' post-it notes. So there's less that sense of, I'll just put what they put. And also, I get them to do it right at the start of the lesson, usually when I'm doing my retrieval practice. And it's very much individually, in silence, and I'll go around and just make sure that that's not happening. So I usually get questions from all students, and there's usually a range even within the same topics, and some of them are really, really basic questions, such as, can you tell me how long the assessment is, what do we do if we can't remember a quotation, or things like this, whereas others will be particularly specific and technical. You keep mentioning this one particular word, can you give me a definition of it again because I'm still struggling with it. So you get a whole range of questions, and I just find it particularly useful. And I've not had any kind of pushback or complaints about it. It's something that they all just go along with now.
I love it.